Hello and welcome to this week's episode of About Small Business. This is the 17th episode of the About Small Business podcast. If you're enjoying what we're doing, if I could ask you, please give us a like, give us a subscribe and click the little notification bell, which will let you know when we've got another episode coming up. In this episode, I'm chatting to Justin Chilton from Magic Carpets. Now, Justin, thank you for coming on the podcast. You reached out to me and told me a little bit about your story, and it seems absolutely fascinating. So I am looking forward to hearing in a little bit more detail. I'm going to take you back to when I first became aware of who you are. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll just give us a little bit about the reputation that your business has got. And we're going back, I think it must have been round about to 2010, something around about that area. Facebook was starting to take off, and there was a little group which was gaining a lot of traction. It was called the Consett Chatterbox, and people were putting on there. They were asking for recommendations about all sorts of different things, and your name just kept coming up as someone that's been recommended as a carpet cleaner. And so your name, we've not actually met before, but your name is familiar to me because of that. Yeah. So clearly that's a fantastic achievement to start off with.
The people at Consett have been very good to us as a business.
That's it. And you're Consett born and bred, aren't you?
Yep. Yeah.
So if we, carpet cleaning, it's not like the train drivers that we sort of think of, right, when I grow older, this is what I want to do. And I know certainly I can see some of your photos. You're ex-army as well.
Yep, I'm ex-army. Yeah.
So if we can kind of go back to school, you did okay at school, didn't you?
I suppose so. It's an interesting point because I see so many posts and people who didn't like school, and I loved school. I just absolutely loved school. I never had a problem with it. I didn't really have any issues, even down to the school food. There was a thing on the other day on the TV about, and there were school dinners there, and I thought, I loved school. Yeah, I mean, you pay good money now for a 3-course meal,
yeah,
and you got that for free at school. Well, it was part of the system. No, I loved school, mate. I never, not a problem whatsoever. I just wish I'd listened to my parents who told us they were the best days of my life.
To be fair, it sounds like you enjoyed it still, so you did kind of make the most of it.
Yeah.
Anything at school that which were your favourite subjects? Anything that?
The subject that I did the best of, which I have had some puns about it before, but we'll not go there with it. Was religious education, actually.
Okay.
And I believe in a divine power, if you like. I believe in a higher intelligence, but religious education, obviously I'm conscious of potentially upsetting people's beliefs. And for me, anything that gives people belief in the word faith, right, is great by me, but I don't per se believe in the biblical story.
If someone gets something out of something, then that's great.
For me, that's great.
But it's not for you.
I do believe in a higher form of intelligence. Yeah. I'm hugely into the universe, the powers of the universe, which to some people is a little bit much, but we're not here by chance. I certainly don't believe that. It's not just a big bang and some atoms created this and that. That's personally what I don't believe. But what did create it, I'm not sure if it's a man with a white beard, if you like.
That's absolutely fair enough. So you did well in RE, but then I know, because you've already told me this, you then went on, you left school and you went to join the army.
Yeah, well,
is that something you always wanted to do?
No, I did a YTS first. I was very conscious. One thing I've learned about myself in life is I'm very self-aware, right? Which I wasn't self-aware enough to know I was. It's just, it's been pointed out to us by so many people, as we'll get on to later. Obviously, I've had my own problems with mental health, which has involved a lot of personal development, stuff like that. And one thing that always gets picked out about is how self-aware I am of myself. So I was aware of, at an early age, of the effects of the steelworks closing, which predominantly, I would say, a good 80-90% of people who are probably watching this podcast, if they were born and bred in Consett, would have suffered to some degree.
Yeah.
It was, I'm sure at one point for years, Consett was the most highest, blackest unemployment area in the whole of Europe, because there was only one thing Consett was here for, was the steelworks. And that created, you know, like issues within the family, and my mum and dad split up when we were quite young. But money always seemed to be the root of the arguments, if you like.
Yeah.
So for me, when I left school in 87, there wasn't a great deal going on in Consett, but obviously the government had started, following on from the Youth Opportunity Scheme, was the YTS. So I went on a YTS, and we got into one in Halo, which was like supposedly the better one around. You actually got more money. If you turned up every day, you got an extra £5 at the end
Hey,
of
you
the
can't
week.
knock it, can you?
Hey, but back in 1987,
I would say that would have been
was
quite.
allowed.
I want to say I don't know the maths, but I'm pretty sure that would have been quite
Aye,
quite an
it was
incentive.
quite a bit. The average, I'm saying, was it a £5? No, sorry, £4. My bad. You got £32.50 if you went to into church, which was what the YTS was called, every day.
Yeah.
You got that every week if you went every day, and it was £28.50 on every other YTS.
Right.
So I went to that one, and I was actually only on my YTS for 6 weeks.
What were you doing on your YTS?
I was meant to be doing welding, mechanics, and engineering. So and you did them in groups of like 6 weeks worth of work.
Yeah.
And I did my engineering one first, and I've just always been a perfectionist. Like at one point, it's something I've started to let go of a bit, but like at one point I was like I'm like anally perfectionism. So with engineering, I hope I'm not insulting your intelligence, but with engineering you have tolerances, and you have like gauges to measure it and all that. Oop, just hit that there. So for example, if the tolerance was you were allowed, they would set your targets of things to do. So for example, the particular point that I'm thinking of is we had this thing to do, which was you had to step the bar, you had to knurl it, you had to thread it, and it was all things on it, all screwed together, and it had to measure this, and when it was apart, certain things had to measure certain things. So say for example, if the because I can't recall exactly what it was, but say for example, if the tolerances was plus or 10,000,
Yeah.
which is like I think of an inch or something like that. I can't remember. Was that like we're talking 40 years now? While all the lads would get it there or thereabout and bugger off outside for a tab, I would sit there with like my emery cloth, and if you put chalk dust on, it makes it even fine. And I got mine, so it was nothing. So every single measurement was nothing. And what they would do at the time is they would invite local businesses in to see what the lads were doing on the off chance that they'll go out on like a placement. And the idea was you would do this placement within the company, and then you should get it kept on for a full-time job.
Yeah.
So
I think that was the whole thing.
That was
YTS, wasn't it? It's like it kind of worked like, I mean, for those people that don't know, it was kind of almost like an apprenticeship, but I do believe at the time there was a lot of cynicism about people not getting.
It just got exploited basically, and hence this is why I come about joining the army.
Right. Okay.
So, and I'm not saying it was just a situation, because by the time that come around, obviously we weren't that far off the big crash in 1990. So
yes,
as a kid you don't see that, but the powers that be do see it come. So the long story short was they've come out and they've started measuring these parts, and they went, "Oh, whose is that one?" And, "Oh, that's Justin's there." Like, the guy who measured it was like, "I've never seen a part like that." Now they had repeatedly took other guys, and there was guys when I went there who did actually get full-time jobs, but they'd been further down, like they'd maybe left school at 85, 86. But this employer was a good one for taking them on. But long story short, then I went out with them to do what's called precision engineering, and the place I was going to be a tool maker for the punches and dies for the press machines, and I was there for 19 months. Great, loved it and all that. And me being me, I've always had a little bit of something about us. I thought, well, I'm not waiting till the last minute, so I'm going to ask him if I'm going to get kept on. In my mind, I thought, I've been here 80 months. You've told us it's the best bit that you've ever seen, sort of thing. I was actually put on the inspection department of it as well.
Right.
So I thought, well, I've got all the makings of it, and I always remember him saying, in the current climate, like, I kind of predict we're going to keep it on.
Yeah.
So at that point, I had 3 months left of me YTS. Now, what used to happen was a lot of lads would go back. If I went back there now, I'm at 18 months behind all them other people who there maybe's been learning mechanics to a higher level. Because what you could do is you done your three, and then you would pick one you might wanted to like kind of focus on.
Yeah.
So I would hardly be able to do a run on a weld, if you like, whereas there'd be kids there who'd be practically doing it with their eyes closed, So I thought, well, I'm going to be at the back of the pecking order here. So I had been in the cadets at the time, and I just thought, I'll have a bash at the army. I like the cadets. I'll have a bash at the army. And I went down to Clearpath.
Was there no other impetus than that? Just that you quite fancied it, and you were
I just didn't want to be on the dole.
Right.
It was pure and simple as that. I did not want to be on the dole.
I think it's worth mentioning that I think the stigma around being on the dole wasn't quite the same back then, or it certainly felt that way to me.
I don't know. Like I say, for me, the only experience I have of it was I just remember it like when the company closed. I remember having to help my dad.
Yeah.
My dad had to go back to college, and like it was very, very rare. I can count on that hands the amount of times I'd ever seen my dad cry in the whole of his life. But certainly at that time when he was a young, proud man, how distraught he was. I like couldn't do what I would term as basic maths from school, because obviously. And we were the same, really. Blackfine at the time, great school, I loved it, but certainly to a degree we would have just been geared up to be going up to the hill on the company. Yeah. There was no even when you got your careers talk, I was sort of like, well, what do you think you're going to do? Like, well, you're probably going to go up there. You know what I mean? Because that's all Consett was for. So
I think a lot of northeast towns were like that, wasn't it? Like the pit villages and things.
Nothing. Like I would have just went with my father. Like my father went with his father. His father went with his father. Do you know what I mean? It was just that's what my dad worked in the billet mill. Without a doubt, I'd have probably just getting an introduction at the billet mill, and that would have been me. And then when it started to close, obviously, although it was 3 or 4 years before I was due to leave school, there was just nothing around for it.
Yeah. If that had been the case, do you think you would have enjoyed that life?
I don't know. Probably because no different, do you? You know what I mean? If that's,
I'm just thinking, just based on, I mean, we have only just met, but certainly you've got a lot of energy about you. Mm-hmm. I mentioned about the lack of stigma on the dole because I think the reason I mentioned that is I think that speaks of your work ethic.
Right.
Because certainly I do remember from my town, and it just anecdotally around lots of towns, there were a lot of people going on the dole. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't as almost, dare I say, stigmatized as it seems to be now.
Yeah.
So you deciding that's not for me, that's quite an interesting one. I'm just wondering as well, because of that, you're active, you want to be doing something. And I'm just wondering perhaps if you think that the life of just going up the steelworks, if that would have maybe suited you.
Honestly, I can't say, Barry. I certainly know none of us are the same person now as what we were back then. When I was, like I say, I had no problem with school or anything like that. I've always been a carefree person.
Yeah.
Up until like my incident in the army, if you like, which I'm saying always been. So that was only like 2 years after that. But I don't know. It's one of them. It's something that I've been very keen with. Like I said, what I alluded to before, where we started film, is I have spent a lot of money on personal development and trying to get to know myself, and my thoughts with I'm more like spiritualist than what I am religious, if you like, and life just fascinates us because I can see the journey of where I've been and where I'm from. If I'm honest, I've never actually, it's given some food for thought, because I've never actually thought why I thought like that. I just thought that I thought like that is because maybe there's just something in us that thought I don't want to feel how, and I have to be careful what I'm saying because I don't want to demonize my parents, but it wasn't it wasn't a bad environment, if you like, but that wasn't how I wanted to feel. If not working created that kind of emotions within the environment, I think as a child I was very aware of how sad that was to myself, that I thought, well, I don't want if that's something that is kind of repetitively we're here all the time. I want to eliminate that then, because I certainly don't want that to be an issue. I
don't think that's in any way disrespect. I think you've actually put that really well. Right. And I think, to be fair, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we all want our children to, I mean, better's a subjective term, but I mean, whatever it does mean, I think we all want our kids to do better than we're doing and have a nicer life. And that's what we're doing everything for.
Job as a parent, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's a tough one. So you've gone to the army. Mm-hmm. And how did you find that?
I loved it.
Yeah.
There's a trait that I'm having to constantly work on within my personal development, and you'll find as I'm doing it all, I kind of apologise for myself all the time, because I've struggled with self-worth during my life from no other reason than, how do I word it without sounding pompous with it? People's opinions of you, right, are none of your business to say, right? But it's always an interfere within themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not normally a true reflection on the person who it's aimed at. I've had a lot of negativity against us of things that were like out of my control. Like you said before, when you were on about setting the cameras up, well, you're all right, you're a good looking lad and that, right?
You just wanted to get that one in.
Yeah. Because I've still got it. But I would literally, like I took up boxing, I'll come to that as well, I suppose. But I would literally, people would punch us in the face, like other kids, because their girlfriend fancied us or something. I'd be like, well, you know, in my head I think, well, how can I do now about that?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't at that point have been making any advances on their girlfriend, if you like, that sort of thing. So with the army as well, I went into the army and I excelled at that. I got pulled up at the end when we passed out of our passing out parade by my troop corporal, which had said, I'll not say the exact words he said because there's a bit of swearing in it, but I'd cost them £100. And apparently what they would do is when all the new recruits come in, they'd all have a bet on who they thought would get the best recruit.
Right.
He says, and you cost me £100, he says, because he says, you got a week 6. He says, then you just sat back. He says, did you find it easy? You found it too easy, didn't you? And I went, well, I didn't find it challenging and I don't mean that hard. And he's like, well, it was obvious. He says, you could have pushed on to be so much more. And I was like, well, I passed out though, didn't I? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, that was it. I just didn't find it hard. It didn't challenge us. It's I don't know. It's just it's a queer old trait. Like I say, I told you before, I'd done the London Marathon. I actually did a video for it because I did it in aid of my father, and I did it for mental health, combat stress. And I did a video as we're coming around the corner from Buckingham Palace, and right, I've done it now, and like I'm hugely passionate about mental health, and I'm saying don't ever give up. There's always a better day. Now, bearing in mind, I ran that marathon after a year after my dad had committed suicide. It was the worst year I've had in my life, but I'm still here. There was times when I didn't know how I was going to get through it, but I knew there was a better day, right? And I did it for that. And when I crossed the finishing line, I didn't even know it was at the finishing line, and I instantly had the euphoria of doing it, but within 30 seconds, my head had switched to like, what's next?
Right.
And it's a trait that it pushes us on to always be good at what I do, but it can also be like a big burden to carry because nothing ever seems to, and like I say, because I'm going to do it again, I apologize. I don't want to sound grandiose or pompous or, you know, overconfident or what like that, but I struggle to find things that really challenge me and give me a gratitude at it. It's just, right, I've done that, what's next?
I find that interesting because of what you've said about school, because there's quite a few people, I mean, on the podcast, off the podcast, that I've spoken to that share that trait, and that's caused them to really lose interest at school. Whereas it's, you know, that's clearly not been the case for you. I mean, you've mentioned quite a lot about your mental health and the army. You did enjoy the army, but that did, because you mentioned this to me already, that did take quite a dark turn for you, didn't it?
Yeah, in Northern Ireland. I am good with it now, but sometimes it's just a little bit, you know. The long and short of it basically is the IRA blew up six of the lads that I was serving with, and I think off the top of my head there was 14 injuries after that as well, and it was just a very, very complicated situation, because the long and short of it, if you like quickly to it was on a checkpoint. So normally if we were seeing something like that in Northern Ireland happening, because they've endangered life or they've took life, we could return fire and we could kind of try and do something about it.
Yeah.
But we couldn't, because we'd be firing into Southern Ireland, which would then be classed as an act of war.
Right.
Because you're firing live rounds into another country.
It makes sense,
so
but you
just had to sit there and watch them do what they were doing, and then bugger off into Southern Ireland, and ultimately they got away with it. And then to rub salt in the wounds, when it come up that we were accusing them of who they were and all that, and the RUC had raided their houses and found out the plans for them doing it and this, that, and the other, and the intelligence. So we knew who they were. without going too much into it, the funny thing with Northern Ireland, for want of a better word, if you want to use funny, is you knew who all the terrorists were.
Right.
But in the eyes of the law, right, because they've never been convicted of it, you can't call them a terrorist, right? But they knew you knew, right? And we knew that they knew that we knew, and it was just a cat and mouse game. So the next day they were out in the streets taunting us about it, and so it was put out that they went to the European Court of Human Rights and claimed like hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of compensation as well for defamation of character. Which invariably in our heads meant, well, you're going to buy more guns and bombs with that, and so right. It was a real hard thing to, without going too far ahead. I wasn't even aware I had post-traumatic stress disorder till about easily 10, 12 years down the line, because it's a funny thing, that kind of thing. Sometimes you're going to be affected with it immediately. Well, I probably was affected with it immediately.
Yeah,
I just wasn't aware of what was wrong with us.
I think we mentioned earlier, it just wasn't really something that was taught an awful lot.
Well, you were in the army. It was just, I mean, the next day we were back out on patrol, and then I did another tour of Ireland straight after that as well.
Was that just expected?
What's your job?
That was the attitude. No.
Well, that's what when my wife, who's been very instrumental in my recovery, she was like, "Well, I can't say now, but Louise, I'm a soldier. What they don't say, oh, we have some time off till you're all right. We'll just go and get some other soldiers in." Yeah. My job at that time was to be on patrol in Northern Ireland, assisting the RUC in the upholding of law and order. That's the technical terms of what the army was there for. Yeah. Contrary to a lot of popular belief, the army wasn't there to be like the former role. We were meant to be taking a secondary role, right, and assisting the RUC to uphold law and order. Over the years, obviously, it all merged into like just being one kind of big force there, you know, and an equal target, if you like. But we couldn't have another day off. What if all of us had went, oh, listen, I'm feeling a bit down about what I seen, blah blah blah. Oh, we just go out and patrol, where they've got free rein as also to do what they want anyway as well. Yeah. But it just can't happen.
I suppose you're playing by rules, they're not.
Exactly. But I have up in the attic a book that thick, and if I showed you the rules on like what, even the simple rules, the rules of engagement was called. It was a yellow card. And again, so it goes into what I was saying about us being return fire. The procedure that you had to adhere to before you could actually open fire is unbelievable. I'll give you an incident that happened to show you how crazy it was. And I know this is not the terms of the podcast, but they would make their own, for want of a better word, hand grenades. Yeah. They were called IAGs, improvised anti-armor grenade. And it was like a baked bean tin with a stick, like the old German hand grenades. And what would happen, it would have to hit face flat in order to detonate. Now, so say if it hit my wagon like that and it didn't detonate, right? In theory, they haven't endangered my life. So someone could run out from a street corner as I'm driving along. They could throw it, so I know it's a bomb coming towards us. I can't return fire until that's exploded, because they haven't endangered my life. Because how do I know that what was in that? It could have been a dummy one. It could have been. It's just crazy. If somebody opened fire on me, I have to shout 3 times to them, "Stop, British Army, or I will fire."
I've actually heard that
before I can return fire.
I've actually heard that.
And I have to say it loud enough that I know that they could have heard it. And it was just you can't win a war against things like that. Well, and I shouldn't use the term war because it wasn't a war, but you can't win anything against.
Yeah, I think which is what made it so complex, wasn't it?
So you have all that in your head as well, because post-traumatic stress disorder is not just about depression, it's about the stress that's built up with it. So when the environment I was in, we lived on, our camp was just a porta cabin. Yeah. That's what we lived in for 7 months. 6 of us in one of them, in like, the corrugated porta cabins, that was us in that. And then there was another 2 attached for the infantry battalion. The camp was so small, you could only reverse the Land Rovers in. Yeah. You couldn't drive in and 3-point turn it. And we were right in the middle of a Catholic estate with mesh over the top to stop them hoying things in. Right. And you couldn't leave that facility unless you had green on, like your army uniform, with your, like what civilians would term bulletproof vest and a loaded rifle. you couldn't have just like walked out and went to the shop or out like that, you know.
No.
So you were literally, so you're living under them conditions all the time as well, you know. So, and like they would hoy things at you, or if you're going from Sanger to Sanger, sometimes they'd take a pot shot at you from down in the bog side, because we were on the Londonderry walls, and it was just they were at you all the time, like, you know. So
yeah, I mean,
that's stress.
I don't think it's any secret about what a number of British squaddies went through in Northern Ireland. I remember sort of from being that age, any friends that any of us had at university were going there, we were always panicking.
Aye.
And well, actually, by the time we got to university, I think that was more sort of going on to Iraq by that point. But certainly, there was a lot of fear about Northern Ireland, which seemed to not be the main issue that the army was facing as we sort of moved on from that. So you're then in a situation, you're suffering. Was your PTSD, was that undiagnosed?
It was at that point, because obviously I'm still on active duty and that, so you don't, the way post-traumatic stress disorder and that works is if you're on high alert, obviously the human body's just about survive.
Yeah.
It's not until you become in an environment where maybe things have calmed down a bit that all of a sudden your mind will go, right, hold on then. Certainly that's what happened to me, and I've read a lot into it. I've had experience with other lads who serve a good, and I could easily say this would maybe even be on the low side. 80% of people that I know, I run an armed force breakfast club as well. So even guys on that from various periods who've maybe served in the 60s, the 50s. We've even got guys, maybe it's not the 50s, because obviously that's getting on a little bit, but certainly we've got guys who serve 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, right way up to modern day. We'll get some guys turn up who are still serving. All of them have got some form of issues. Yeah. Without a doubt.
Understandably so. So, I mean, how long after that did you leave the army?
I left, after that incident, I left about 2 years after that.
And did you return to Consett?
Well, the thing for me was, I had joined the army because A, I didn't want to be on the door, but B, and still to this day, I think it is, the army was revered as in, like, you know, if you get in that, you're going to get some good qualifications, you know, you'll be a good employee, you know. So I was never ever going to be a career soldier. Although, again, going back to like what I said, when I signed off to get out, there was hell on. I was actually on orders for promotion. I'd done you have to do a what's called a GMQC, which is a junior military qualification course. You have to do that in order to become promoted. The basis of that is it's even worse than basic training, because obviously you've been a normal soldier for so long, so you took right the way back. So it's back to polishing boots, doing uniforms, making bed blocks, and like all the like the basic stuff. But you get taught how to teach the new soldiers coming through. Yeah. So basically, what they do is they put you in a position to remind you of how you were treated when you were in basic, so that you kind of know the borderline of where you can go. And when I did that course, I got best dressed soldier for that. And I loved the course. The course to me was easy. I didn't find it hard and I then become what's called an O-grade soldier, which is an outstanding soldier. So you're ready for promotion at the next earliest opportunity. And I come home on leave after that, because I did that course while I was on my second tour in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And everyone was going crazy about Nissan's opening a new line over in Sunderland, and they're going to be paying. And I think at the time they were paying, I think it was £1,180, right, to have this job at Nissan. And I'd just come back from Northern Ireland with danger money, and I was only earning 920 quid, and I thought, I'm doing something wrong here, aren't I? Yeah. So, because we'd done 2 tours off back to back more or less, which would never been heard of. You used to normally do a tour of Ireland, and then you would at least get a couple of years off or something, and then come back. And we did 2 back to back, 2 7-month tours back to back. We got a month's leave. So the job centres were still around at that time. Yeah. So I went to the job centre and got an application form, and I would just fill it out for Nissan. Because in the back of my head, I thought I can buy myself out the army if. And I had a few quid saved, because again, what I said, when you're in Ireland, there's no way to go, and you can't spend your money, so it just goes in the bank. And that was where kind of the illusion of the army being well paid, because if I'd done a 7-month tour and I'm getting 900 odd quid a month, now back in them days when you're in the army, that was your pay.
Yeah.
So that paid for your accommodation, your food and all that. That was already took out. Because I'm in Ireland, I'm not wearing any civilian clothes or out like that. I'm not going out on the drink or out like that. So that money just goes in the bank.
Yeah.
So that was like, I'm coming home with $6,000. Well, $6,000 in 1990.
Absolutely. That's an awful lot.
Like, you know, the pub's got more all of that, like, to be fair. But, so I just thought I'll buy myself out the army if I get a job. So, because I put on my resume, I'd done this, best dressed soldier and this, that, and everything was about best. While I was in the army, I won a few military skills competitions as well. I got best boxer when I was in the army. I got best skier. And I know it sounds like I'm being big-headed, but it's not. It's just, if I turn my hand to something, I've always said, and again, I suppose it comes back to being sounding apologetic, I maybe pick me battles selectively,
Yeah.
but I never feel in what I do. So I don't know whether that is that because I pick me, you know, I may think, well, I'll not have a go at that because I mightn't be good at it. But if it interests us and I can get passionate about it, I will succeed in it without a doubt, you know, and I'll succeed at a level where most people won't. And I do, and I'm going to look at the camera and say that I'm not seeing any of that to be big-headed or out that. It's just, that's just the way my nature is. It's why we've been so successful with Magic Carpets, because when people say to me, just do your best, they've no idea what my best is, right?
Right.
And it's far better than what, like, that's a term of like, well, I'm not too bothered. And they'll be like, bloody hell, I wasn't expecting you to do, because it's rule number one that you shouldn't do in business, and you shouldn't personalize your business. You should separate the two. But if Magic Carpets did a bad job, it's not Magic Carpets that done the bad job. It's just that done the bad job. And that's the way I've looked at it. And I still do every single job now as if the dependency of the business, the success of it was dependent on it, because it's just not in my nature not to. And I love seeing people's faces like when you do it. You know, I like the joy of doing something like that for people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I mean, so basically, we've gone from the army. I'm assuming you got your job at Nissan.
Oh, I straight away.
And I'm assuming, just curiously, just so recently, I think you're probably about the third person that's mentioned Nissan and what a good company they were to work for.
Really?
Well, now this is interesting. This is interesting. So yeah, go on then.
Right. On hindsight, as a business, great for learning lessons. When we've had stuff, I understood why Nissan implemented it. But let's just say they like the pound of flesh off you.
Right.
That's how we'll leave it as.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you some horror stories about it, like, you know.
Right. So we'll park that.
Paid. It's well paid. It's a well paid job in the Northeast.
Yeah.
But it's a hard job, and they're not very forgiving on what they expect from you, shall we say.
Well, I mean, that's fine. What I am interested though, I mean, like sort of how, because we've talked a lot about your life, and it's been quite an incredible journey, and you've been through more than your fair share. I'm still fascinated as to how that comes. I can see the correlation in you being passionate in everything you do. I can see the correlation in terms of you being determined to make everything a success. I'm not seeing any inspiration as to what made you choose carpet cleaning.
Carpet cleaning, simple. Simple, I'll tell you where it comes from again.
Did you do anything between Nissan and starting your business? Right.
Nissan, like I say, you must have been talking to three who were the exception of the rule, or the maybe weren't on the production line, shall we say.
Right.
So when I first, and this is where me disdain for it, if you like, maybe stemmed from. When I first left the army and I got a job at Nissan, one of my last roles when I was in Northern Ireland was what a civilian would perceive as undercover car driving.
Right.
It wasn't as elaborate as that, you know. I wasn't like, you know, like a James Bond kind of character. I wasn't that kind of thing. But what it was is, whilst you're in the province, obviously the lads and the lasses and also the families have got to get home to England at some point and somehow. Now, they couldn't go in an army vehicle to the airport because obviously there's eyes everywhere.
Yes.
So they would have to go in a vehicle. So we were allowed to grow our hair long, and, you know, you'd have a pistol and all that. But basically, you were on your own, and you would be taking that family to the airport, or you'd be picking somebody up from the airport.
Right,
you're acting as just a civilian. And again, cat and mouse games. They probably even knew who you were anyway, but it was just, you know, would we take him out there? Would that be good for the cause or whatever? Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Certainly, there was many times I'd pull up at travel lights and you could see them looking at you and you think, as I'd feel the sweat running down my neck, I think they know exactly who I am. but they would notice through silly things like, if I pull to a traffic light in my vehicle, right, and I'm army, I don't pull to the vehicle how we normally do because I need to be able to get away, so I'd be away from it, right? Or I'd be coasting up and they're going, why is he coasting up to that light there? Well, I'm coasting up because I'm thinking, are you going to change? Are you going to change? Are you going to change? And if it doesn't change, I'm going to stop short so that if anything does happen, I can get away. Do you know what I mean? So we've done all that. And so Nissan was like, when I got interviewed for that, they were like, absolutely like enthralled by it. And they're like, so basically you drove cars and the responsibility was this and that. So I got a job test driving brand new cars. I thought I'd landed, I'd literally landed on 2 feet and I was like, aye, I'll have that job. So it cost us about 300, but that was it. They said, but you're still in the army. And I went, well, I can actually buy myself out. I said, but it will take us 6 months. Because the problem being is at that point, I was quite well qualified of all the courses that I said and all the things I've achieved. Now, the army's putting that into you. So if I'm going to bugger off and leave, they're like, whoa, hold on here, Justin. Like, we've just, you've been on a course to be trained up to be a corporal. You've done, but they actually wanted us to box for the regiment at one point as well. So that involved a lot of like training and this and that. They put so much into me and then I'm going, oh, I'm going to be away like me. And they're like, no, you're not. So I had to pay a higher fee, but I also had to wait a bit longer than what it was. So I had to say to Nissan, listen, I'm not going to get out as quick as what I think I am. So they actually held my position as well till July, which was like pretty like unheard of as well, And again, I know it sounds like grandeur and all that, but I just have had all these incidents through, and it's why I am where I am now is because you're saying that I've had some tail and blah, 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 but I've had a great life, right? Because I look back now and I don't look on any of them as maybe at the time I thought, oh, woe is me, or why is this happening, or whatever. But I'm where I am now because of all of them.
I mean, absolutely. I think. I mean, the reason I mentioned that is everyone has ups and downs, and they're as up or as down as an individual perceive them.
Yeah.
I think most people would perceive what you've been through and experienced in the army as a pretty severe down. If you don't, then that's brilliant that you can look at it like that. But if you recount that tale to anyone, I'm reasonably certain that unless they've been through something similar, the majority of people are going to go, whoa.
I totally get that. The way I get wrong off the wife all the time. As we get on further on as well, I had like a serious health scare and all, and she's like, Justin, like, when are you going to take something serious? And I'm like, but I'm still here now. Do you know?
Yeah.
To me, it's just, I don't know. I believe, I sternly 100% believe that everything happens to you for a reason, right? And if you learn from it, the reason will become apparent and it'll be the most positive, brilliant thing that you can do. But if you don't, it's going to just keep repeating. Like I said to you before, we talked about the law of attraction, the universe and that. And some people just don't get it. But for me, I know from my own experiences, everything that's happened to me, because I'm quite analytical, me as well, right?
Yeah.
Like I say, as well as being a perfectionist, I'm quite analytical. So I need to know how, like my mum used to say, you need to know the far end of a fart and which way the wind blows you. But that's just the way I am. But when I do that, then I'll find out the reason for that, and I've learned from that, and then that'll push us on in another direction for something else. So I got out and went into Nissan, and then I was at Nissan for 5 years doing what was called fine line. So that was inspection, test drive, and them sort of thing. So the process at Nissan was that literally the car goes in a silver reel of steel, and it's pressed together, dipped, painted. You can literally, they used to do a tour where Nissan were one of the first major manufacturers to do it. You could do it with Rolls Royces and Bentleys and all that, and you can order your car to spec. But Nissan were the first ones to do it with a family car. So you could walk into a Nissan dealer in Sunderland and say, right, this is what I want out of we were on the motor line, this is what I want out of my motor. So I want mud flaps, I want a radio, I want this, I want that, I want the other. And that car will be made to order for you. So Nissan didn't build cars to stockpile, they built them per order, if you like. So what they would do is they would say, if you want as well, you can come and follow that around the journey of the plant. So you could literally go and see it as come in as like, there's your car there, it's a roll of steel. And then what should be pressed into panels, what should be welded together, and all the way around, So when it was finished, my job was literally, I'd get off and I put the key in, I go boom, and I start that car the first time. And then you check to make sure everything works, all the lights, the wipers, the heaters, the blowers. There's what's called a build sheet on the front, which would tell you exactly the specification of that car. And then you just take it off for a test drive, make sure there's no rattles, no knocks, no bumps, or that, and then stamp it, and then you can, there you go, Mr. Smith, there's your car. So I was on that for 5 years, and Nissan had a policy of if somebody got injured on line, they would take an easier job, and the person who was on the easier job would go on the production line. It was under the guise of everybody should be able to do everybody's job. So I remember my team leader coming around one day saying, "Oh, look, they're looking for someone to go on line, blah, blah." And I just, for me, I'm a big believer in reward for merit and all that for what you do. And I thought, well, they're not going to put me on line. I've turned in every day. Like, this kid here doesn't turn in, this one, this, that, and the other. And lo and behold, all the others told them they had something wrong with them. I've got a bad back, I've got this, I've got that. And I went, well, no, there's nothing wrong with us. I'm fit as a lot. No, well, you're going on the production line. And It was horrible because for 5 years, I've been inspecting all the work that these guys are doing on the production line.
Right.
They get their arse kicked for making faults.
Right.
So I'm the devil on it. So when I went on the production line, it was
like a policeman going into prison.
Literally. So put on the hardest job, give them the worst parts to do and all that, you know.
Right.
And I liked Nissan when I was doing inspection and stuff like that. I hated just putting seats in cars it was just mind-numbing, boring. It's not what my head's about, you know what I mean? So we'd been driving to work one day, and one of the guys, the 5 of us used to share a lift into work because obviously it's a canny old journey around and that, there and back. And one of the lads had said, I was still living at home at the time as well. So one of the lads had said, I've just had my carpet cleaned the day. And the other lad was, I had mine done the other day. I remember sitting in the back, you know, these were married lads. I was single at the time. I was thinking, God almighty Christ, kill us now if that's what getting married's about, talking about getting your carpets clean. If only I knew as passionate as I am now about it. And but I knew my mum and my dad got the carpets cleaned respectively because they were split up, you know. And I can always remember if I'd went in the house and my mum had the carpets cleaned, I did used to look and think, bloody hell, that carpet looks like new. So I remember him saying, this is where my light bulb moment come in, he says, he reckons you could work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day and not have enough time. So that was me, ding, light bulb moment. I thought, well, if he can work that, there's room for somewhere else. So I asked my mum and dad, you know, how much he charged and what. And I remember at the time it was like, I think it was 25 quid or something like that, because we're going back like 20 odd years. 25 quid, she says, and he's there about 45 minutes. I thought, Jesus Christ. And my dad had like a similar to our room here, lounge suite diner. How much like that? He says, I think it's about 50 quid. I went, how long is he there? Like, he went, hour and 10. I thought, 50 quid for an hour's worth of work? I'm working a night shift for 80 quid. Yeah. Right? So, sorry, I wasn't at home there at that point. I was at home when I was at Nissan, but when I'd left by then, I'd just started seeing my wife, and I didn't have a computer out like that, you know, but she had one, and she did a search. There was a place at Gateshead that made the machines, did a training course. So I thought, well, I'll have a look, see what the crack is with it. And and I've got to blow my own trumpet here again. When I did the course over the course of a couple of weekends, I did the course and that, and at the end, he pulled us to one side. He says, you're going to do all right at this, you, like. He says, in fact, I'll be watching out for you. I went, why is that? He says, I've never had as many people ask, I've never had somebody ask us as many in-depth questions. He says, well, the rest of the class just sit there going, right? And I went, but Bernie went, no. He says, I like what I see in you, like. He says, you'll be good at this, like, you know. And so what I did was, once I bought all my equipment, I started on friends and family first, and I was still working at Nissan at the time. So for 6 months while I built my business up, if I was on a late shift, which meant we didn't get into work till 2 o'clock, I would work from 9 till 1 and then drive straight from home, straight from my last job into work. Yeah. Do a late shift, come home, go into bed and get up and repeat again and work a Saturday. If I was on an early shift, I would take my uniform with us, my other uniform outside, my Nissan uniform, get back to Consett for about 1:30, something like that, already changed into my uniform and work from like 1 till about 6, 7 o'clock at night and work a Saturday and just built my business up then. Bearing in mind in them days, no social media, nothing like that. So it was like, I mean, you're relying totally on word of mouth. Word of mouth and advertising, and I gained a whole new appreciation for postmen while I was doing that, because the amount of times I had my fingers chowed, the amount of times I took the skin off me. Delivering flyers, it's a horrible job, isn't it? I couldn't believe how hard it was, honestly, and walking the streets. I mean, like I say, I've just done London Marathon, but even now, still, the miles that the postman put in walking the street, you know, in keep your steps up as well. Like, you know, you've got to admire them. And I just built my business that way. and we've never looked back. We've never suffered. We've never, even with the 3 recessions, we didn't have any issues like that. We've just been a steady climb all the time, until 2018, which I'll tell you about if you.
Yes, no, we're 2018.
In 2018, beginning of that year, we had 12 members of staff. I was contracted with Taylor Wimpey for the whole of the Northeast, from Berwick all the way down to North Yorkshire. We had Carbon Homes on our books. We had all of their properties. They were doing at the time 6,500 houses, I think, they were putting in new central heating, bathrooms, all that.
Yeah.
Durham County Council, and we had a few other big house builders on our books, and we just sensed the Taylor Wimpey one was like a fantastic one, where what they would do is, well, the houses come what's called online. That's like they're a week short of going to the customer. So the inspector would go around and inspect them all, and they get all any other snagging points sorted out, where the workmen would just walk in with muddy boots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we had to go in and clean all the carpets in the property for the new customer to enter them, and the girls would come and do what's called builder cleans, because obviously when you're doing thingies, sweating. When they're builder cleans, so when they're if you plaster walls, as you might know, there's bloody plaster falls for weeks.
Everywhere, yeah.
So they go in, they do like a first clean, go and do a few other properties, then come back when it's settled in and clean it. And we just had a rotation on for that, and it was great, making loads and loads of money in that. But the stress was like through the roof with it, I was just like, because they want the work doing like that, So sometimes it'll be like, or the other side of it would be, I've often seen us, sometimes I would have to drive from here all the way to Cumbria to clean one carpet, and you think, but it was a smooth.
It's part of the contract.
The rough with the smooth. But what happened around that time was in Father's Day is in June, isn't it? In June, the bairn at that time was 7 going on 8, and he'd come back from school with a pre-printed Father's Day card, and it had like where they had to draw things in and stick things in and this, that, and the other. And it was like, me and my dad do this, and me and my dad do that, me and my dad. And on the back, I've actually got it screenshotted somewhere, because it's another thing that I look at all the time to bring us back into line when I start getting a bit carried away with me other business ventures. If my dad could do one thing, he would, and he put go to work.
Right.
And I thought, and I actually went and explained to him, and I cut myself short, because I thought, it doesn't matter what you explain. What it meant was, out of all the things we do together, what would I pick out the most to do with them?
Yeah.
But in his eyes, what he saw was, I'd rather go to work. And I thought, oh my God, you're getting it wrong.
Everything comes at a cost, doesn't it?
It so wrong here.
Everything comes at a cost.
So in my head, what I thought was, right, we're going to have to start doing something here. I'm either going to have to employ a manager to manage everything, or I'm going to have to wind it all in or something. Anyway, fate took care of all that for us without us knowing. Around the same time, I started getting a pain in my belly here. Now, I always tell this tale about it, because this is what I thought. At the same time, it's our wedding anniversary, and our lass had wanted to go back to Ibiza, which was our first holiday. But when in my first holiday, I was in my 30s. I was now 48, right? And I was like, Christ Louise, like, because they're all like bloody Geordie Shore lot over there now, aren't they? And I says, I'm 48, man, not bloody 28, So I was training really hard in the gym. So I thought I was giving myself a hernia. So I thought, well, when I got on holiday, we'll be all right, because I'll not be training, and we'll blah, blah, blah. So I was out running, cycling, all sorts and that. All nice and ripped and everything like that, and looked the biz for thingy, but I still had this pain, and periodically it would come in and it would go off, and that's nothing to worry about. So I went on holiday and that, and on holiday I was having my breakfast one day, and the pain kicked in, like I very, very nearly passed out. Like I seen the bloody lights, and I got a mass sweat on, and I was like, and I'm an early riser, so I'd gone back up to the room, and I was like, whoa, you don't look very well. I just nearly passed out there, Louise. Anyway, what happened was, over the course of the week, I went from taking 1 or 2 Buscopan a day to taking 12 to get through the pain in my belly. So as soon as I come home, I went to, well, I say, get yourself up to the med centre and get yourself like looked at. So I went in, took some blood samples, some urine samples, and a poo sample and all that, and made us come back. Long story short for that, I went 6 times off the trot. Every time I'd go on a Monday for my results, wouldn't get out there, go on the Wednesday, the Monday for the results. Now they couldn't find out. I'd repeat the process again and go back on the Friday for them results. repeat that process 6 times off the trot. Kind of find out wrong with you, Mr. Chilton. By this time, on the final Friday before I'd done it, on the Thursday morning, I'd woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, absolute agony, and I spent 5 hours on that floor over there, crippled. Like I said to you before, I don't believe in God, but no atheists in the trenches praying to him, like what, like, and the pain had come down. So I was like, can you go and get your mum? Went to hospital. They'd done some tests on us in the hospital. Can't find out wrong with you, Mr. Chilton, but you've got a doctor's appointment in the morning. See what they say. We'll have the results back for you Friday morning. So I've gone in on the Friday morning. So this is 6 weeks down the line. Well, it's 7 weeks down the line from when I first started to get these like serious pains. And Cancer put me details in, and they hadn't booked us in again. And I had loads of chow with the staff behind the bloody counter and that. And I thought, oh God, no, it's who's the awkward one on. And as I looked up, I seen the triage nurse, who was the first triage nurse who took me bloods, and she was like that, looking at us with her eyes like that. And she was the wife of one of my mates. She went, come here, Just. So I walked over. I'll not swear, but it rhymes with duck. Like, Duck, what are you doing here? Getting me off us. Sat down, she went, you should have been in hospital 6 weeks ago. Wait there. So the doctor comes, he tilts the screen, and his eyes go like saucers. Can you wait outside, Miss Chilton? Anyway, I get admitted to hospital straight away. They're the same in that. As soon as I see us, they're like, oh my God, where the hell are you been? Put straight on the emergency, straight on, as long as nothing happens to us, you're on the operating table first thing in the morning. It's like, huh? And cut us open. Well, basically, again, they done all the tests, couldn't find out wrong with us on the first x-ray. Did a chest x-ray, couldn't find out wrong with us there. Got his ultrasound, couldn't find out wrong with us there. Had to get a specialist up from Manchester because my blood markers were so high, as he said to us when he finally come up and found out what was wrong with us. He says, I don't know what's wrong with you just yet, Justin. He says, but he says, if you'd have come to us 6 weeks ago, he says, I'd have just put you on the table to cut you open. He says, your blood markers are that high. He says, they're normally fatal then. And I went, all right. He went, you know what fatal means? And I just went, it's canny bad. He went, no, Justin. He says, that's dead. He says, I don't know how you're still alive. He says, because your blood markers are ridiculously high.
Right.
There's something going wrong with your inside. He says, but don't worry, we don't think it's cancer. I went, cancer? And he went, we'll find out when these results come back. Anyway, I went and had I always get them mixed up. I think it's the MRI scan where you go in as the body, isn't it?
Yeah.
The CT's your brain in it. Anyway, that machine you lie on and you go in. And by then, our lass has gone home and all that. It was the Bainsbury birthday the next day as well, like the poor sod. Better come phone your wife, tell her to bring you some stuff. We're going to admit you. So I says, oh, well, I'll bring some overnight stuff. He went, overnight? He says, you'll be lucky if you'll be out here in a week, Justin. So I thought, I'm not telling our lass that, like, because she'll just worry driving from here to Durham, like, you know. And so when we both went in to see the doctor, they had, like, it was like what you see in the old biology books, just like the whole of me inside up on the screen. And he says, we found out what's wrong with you. He says, you've got 9 centimeters of irritation. And within that, there's 6 centimeters of ulcers and lacerations. And right in the middle of that, there's a 3 by 4 centimeter abscess in your large colon. He says, so just matter of factly is like that. He says, so what we're going to do, he says, you're on the operating table 9 o'clock in the morning. As long as now goes wrong with you now, he says, we're going to cut you here and cut you here. He says, now I'm going to join it back up and sew it back up. I went, all right. So, and I always remember looking, it was like pitch black, this bit coming off the colon. So I says, is them white bits there? I says, is that the ulcers and the lacerations? He went, no, Justin. He says, they're the good bits in the colon still. So they cut 11 centimeters of my colon out, sent them away for biopsy. And I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the same time.
Right.
But while I was on the operating table, because now it's ever straightforward with me, they'd gone in to do this keyhole surgery, and it was that big and that inflamed that they had to cut us open to take it all out. And they didn't say how I got it, but then I got sepsis. So I was 3 days I was unconscious with sepsis, and so I very nearly died twice by all accounts, you know. So
right. So
when I come out of that, 7 days, just like, because I can't move hardly in the hospital, because obviously they've cut us open surgery, so my stomach's out. They literally put your intestines that on the table and chop them up. So they've never ever been touched before, so your whole body goes into shock. And it's like really, really tender. So you just have a lot of time to think about things, don't you? And I thought, now it is. It's like I'm building this business here, thinking I'm securing me family's future. Very nearly wasn't here for it, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's got to change this, you know. So we sold some of the business off. And there's a thing called tupi, which means that if you're employed by a business and another business takes over that contract, that business has got to take you on as an employee.
Right.
So the terms and conditions for all the big contracts were every year we had to give in our like health and safety at work, our insurance details and everything like that. So I just wrote them. I said, I'm not renewing my contracts. And they were like, really? Why? And I went, I took really ill. I've reevaluated my life. They can just go. And I just kept the carpets and the upholstery, what I like. I really genuinely love. I like the other parts of the business, but like sometimes you like if I was employing staff, for example, for every lass that I'm employing, we always paid them. And I'm not a big believer in minimum wage or out with that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like you pay peanuts, you get monkeys and that. And I want people to feel like that's all people want to feel in life is respected and worthy and stuff like that.
No,
so if you're paying somebody minimum wage, they're not feeling worthy for what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? So we're always paid above it, you know. And I would always hope that we would get a little bit more back off them, which necessarily wasn't always the case because a lot of people have a sense of entitlement as well. So all these things coupled, and then with, you know, pensions on top of that, and then the insurances, vehicles, diesel, all that. Sometimes I was lucky if I was making a bloody quid an hour off them, you know, and you think, it's not worth it. But they kind of went hand in hand, and this is why I only do domestic work now, because they went hand in hand with. They weren't going to say, oh well, if you don't want to do you can still keep the carpets if you don't want it. You know what I mean? It's like, right, we need a firm, because I can understand for them as a business, they think, well, I don't want to fanny on with two people either. I just want one business and come in. So we're I don't say lost because I give them away. Yeah, but we didn't have
conscious choice. Like I say, after reevaluating, you've looked at things and made a conscious decision about what you're going to do.
So I had none of them. So I just went back to doing like private work, you know, and it's just best thing ever. You know, there's no stress now. There's nothing. I don't worry. I'm here talking to you now because I have every Wednesday off. I only work 4 hours a day every day because, as Renton said, you know, in Trainspotting, I chose life. Because we're caught in this rat race trap, and this is something else I get passionate about, of working and thinking that when we get to 67, we're going to start living our life. You're not going to do that. There's very few people now who are going to get a good retirement pot and be able to be fit and healthy to do what they should be doing now.
You need to live your life now.
Yeah, and I'm hugely passionate on that now, which is why we've branched out into property. I have a supplements business as well, which came about by when I actually had the diagnosis with Crohn's. I was told I'd be on drugs, I could need a colostomy bag, I'd never be able to go to the gym, and all these tales of woe. And there is some people have a hellish time with Crohn's, but I believe as much as you can worry yourself sick, you can think yourself fit as well. I firmly believe that, right? Because I'm living proof of it. I was told, like, you know, like I should have been dead. I've just ran London Marathon, man. Do you know what I mean? I get to the gym all the time. I cycle. I'm a picture of health. It's about what's going on in your mind as well, you know, stuff like that. And that's what got us firmly on me. Because it was a 6-month recovery period as well. So although I got out of hospital after a week, I mean, there was days it would take me an hour to walk from here just to the top of the street. Yeah. Because I was literally could walk like that, and you'd be like, the pain would be intense. I ended up having to do routes where I knew there was like low walls I could sit on and all that, you know. But then once I got back to work, I was just back into it full swing. Started learning a lot about personal development. I've paid for mentors for me personal development, for mindset. I don't want to try and make us out to be anything I'm not, but because I had that brush with death as well, like we're all only here once, Barry, right? Yeah, and absolutely. You think, things would ring in my ears, like what I said to you, where I was like, you're too gung ho, you're this, you're that, and I thought, yeah, sometimes I am, and I'll still put everything I've got into something, do you know? And I'll still rather always think the best of something than the worst of something, but my focus is about mental health, of like when you're in the right place mentally, nothing can bother you. Nothing. No. I used to concern myself about what people think about it. I couldn't give a about what people think about me now, and that's not being big-headed. It just doesn't serve me any purpose.
I think you get a little bit like that as you get older as well.
I would certainly
like you said earlier on. What other people think of you is none of your business.
No.
No, I mean, and so I mean, in terms of looking forward to the future, I mean, you've kind of covered this in a way.
Aye.
You just enjoying your life.
I love it. Aye.
You've reassessed and just, I think, chosen a balance. You're passionate about what you're doing now, and that's basically they're the people I want to talk to for this
Great.
podcast.
Aye.
And I think that seems a great way to round it up. It's a brilliant story. Thank you so much for coming on, Justin Chilton, Magic Carpets. I wish you every success for the future.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to speak
Cheers.
to you.